we develop CounterSnipe APS, which is the Active Protection Software. APS is network security software that includes a number of different modules: intrusion prevention system, host identification, application and vulnerability discovery, correlation of attack to vulnerability data, and intelligent alert management. Now that is a mouthful, but CounterSnipe software is a very comprehensive product, and it has a lot of features and a lot of different modules integrated into one single suite of software. Let's look at the IDS overall, especially network IDS, because that's what CounterSnipe software is, a network intrusion detection system. A network intrusion detection system looks at, in fact, it exploits the weakness in the TCP/IP protocol. Because the TCP/IP packets are openly floating on the network, then your network IDS device is a legal sniffer that sits on the network and looks at every single packet rather than ignoring packets that are not directed at a specific destination. So, and then it compares that TCP/IP traffic to the rule set that you have deployed on that system, and depending on the matches with the rule set or the signature set, it either alerts you via email or logs the traffic and so on. And you may also just want to log the traffic and not send alerts, so for future accountability. Then you have network intrusion prevention system, and the network intrusion prevention system does exactly what network IDS does, plus it also has the ability to block. So as a consequence, it prevents malicious traffic entering your network. It blocks because it sits in line with the site of the traffic, so it can stop, search, and drop. Then we have a surrounding asset knowledge module, and the surrounding asset knowledge module is a piece of software that detects all of the surrounding assets on the network. So it makes it builds a profile of hosts, all IP-bearing hosts on the network, and its applications, the vulnerabilities, the ports that are open, the MAC addresses, all of the detail of your specific network. And it also discovers the vulnerabilities associated with any of those assets, any of those applications. And it does that by means of comparing the application fingerprint to the vulnerability database, and then looking at it to see if there is a vulnerability associated with that application. CounterSnipe architecture then. In the CounterSnipe architecture, you have the working components. That's the snort, the pads, and the firewall at the bottom. Snort does IDS, pads does the asset detection, is the asset detection module, and the firewall function, which is IP tables, it does the blocking and letting it through the traffic based on the signature set in IPS mode. And then, in addition to that, up at the top of the arrow is showing the NIST database, which is the CVE database, which we keep up to date up to about last 4 years. Then we have the IPS rule set, which includes all the snort rules, all the emerging threats rules, and so on. And then we have the application fingerprints, and the application fingerprint database includes fingerprints of all applications or many key applications. In addition to that, all of that information gets fed into the SAC management engine, where it correlates all of that information and decides on whether to alert on some specific matches or not. Snort then, one of the working components. Snort is industry standard intrusion detection engine. It is purely an engine. It sits there, sniffs the packets, and then feeds them to a file. So we obviously take those output from Snort, and we feed it into our management engine, into our database. It's industry standard. There have been many million downloads of Snort, and there have been thousands of people that across the world that have contributed to Snort, to it being what it is today, industry standard. Having said that, there is another alternative nowadays that's up and coming, which is Suricata, and well, that's Suricata. Suricata is something that's born out of the Open Software and Information Foundation, and the idea with Suricata was to have, I think, in a way, have a competitor to Snort product, but better. And Suricata, one of the things that they've done with Suricata is that it does multi-threading. As a consequence of that, it's supposed to be faster. We would look at all of these technologies closely, and as and when we feel appropriate, we will integrate that. So it may be a case in the future that we offer Snort implementation and Suricata based implementation of CounterSnipe network security. Then we have PAD, which is the asset detection software, and PAD detects all of the assets. So it looks for hosts, it looks for applications, and the vulnerabilities. And then within there we provide links to MITRE and NIST, so that if you want to know more about a vulnerability, you can just click on one of these links and read more about that. Then we have SAC for correlation, and the SAC does exactly that. It analyzes the vulnerabilities, the attack data, hosts. So now, if you think about it, we know what machine you've got on your network. We know what application is running on your network. We know what vulnerabilities are present. We also have thousands of signatures and rules that monitor for exploits on your network. Correlating all of that database is a big task, because you want to make sure that your right assets are protected from wrong exploits at the right time. And that's what SAC does. And then it manages all of the alerts. So based on the severity of the attack, criticality of the vulnerability, and the prioritization. So we look at the high priority, low, and the medium. And based on that and the checkboxes that you check in alert management, you will either get alert or you don't get alert, and so on. Although all of the IDS events are logged all the time. How we ship it, so our product is either available as software or an appliance. In both cases, we take full responsibility of supporting it. We keep it up to date. We keep all the risk database updated. That's the big thing. We have in the risk data, we have the CV data, we have the Snort signature data, we have the passive fingerprinting or applications data. All of that is kept up to date. The software is shipped on a single CD. It's an ISO CD, so you boot from it. You do not need any software components. So the only reason for purchasing software is so that you could have local source for appliances, for hardware. And of course, the other option is pre-configured appliance. In terms of the installation options, you can install it 3 different ways. Dedicated, which means it's just doing all the sensing and so on, and it's feeding the output, all the detection work into the management console for management console to deal with it. Or you can have it standalone. In the standalone mode, it is all of the components are on one machine. So you have the sensing product part and the management GUI on the same machine. Deployment options. You have three options. You have the online deployment, where it's doing IDS, so you plug it into a span port or so on, or you have the inline for IPS deployment. In either case, we will be also at the same time doing the network management side. Installation options again in more graphic format. Orange is the TMC, so you will need that orange if you're going to have blue on your network. So if you're going to have just the snort, the pads and firewall, the dedicated machines, you need a TMC to do the management. Otherwise, you can have the yellow on a single server and everything is on that one machine. Here's the sort of typical scenario. So you will, in terms of deployment, you will build an APD, and that's the active protection device. That's basically an appliance with APS on it, with the CounterSnipe software on it. And that appliance can sit in line as an IPS for on the DMZ side, or it can sit online plugged into a switch for APD in IDS mode, or it sits in line with your internal network and from the inside of the firewall. Additionally, you may want to use additional APDs within your networking infrastructure to monitor separate segments, to have different rule sets, to protect the server farm in line with of that segment, and so on. So as we move forward in time, companies are using more and more IPS products within their organization. Why would you want to use CounterSnipe APS or CounterSnipe APS for intrusion prevention security, IDS IPS security, as opposed to any others? Of course, we do IDS IPS. That's the main thing, and we do malware and spyware protection. But IDS IPS alone is no good, because IDS IPS alone generates a lot of alerts, and you got to manage them somehow. Now, what we've done is we don't just manage the IDS IPS alert on sort of guesswork. What we do is we manage those IDS IPS alerts on the basis of how relevant they are to your particular organization. So we detect your assets on within your organization, the hosts, the applications, the vulnerabilities, and so on, and then we manage those alerts. So we have this integrated always-on asset detection. So this is, every time there's a new machine that's added onto your network, we know about it straight away. We also have the ability or the option, and you have a checkbox to do this, to actively scan an asset. So if you find a new asset on your network, you can launch a scan of that immediately, active scan, not just passively listening out for it. And this way you can go and probe all of the open ports on that machine to see what is this machine doing onto your network. And we also have this new or removed asset alerts. So if there's a new asset alert, you get an email alert, or if it's one that was there and someone stole it or removed it and it's against your company policy, you get an alert on that. Then we've got integrated vulnerability to exploit match based on alert management, and this is the alert management module, which matches. We looks at the vulnerabilities and looks at the exploits and says, okay, that machine is this much vulnerable, therefore I should or should not send an alert. The other reason why you want CounterSnipe APS is compliance, and all sorts of compliance, and one of the major ones being PCI compliance. And if you look at PCI compliance, there are some of the items that we picked out of the PCI compliance. 1.1, documented list of ports and services. We actually provide you that. 6.2, identify and remediate vulnerabilities. We give you the ability to do that. Identify access to system. Quarterly vulnerability scans. Now, we scan a machine as soon as it appears on your network. It's not an active scanner as if you schedule a scan and keep scanning every week, but this is when there is a need for a scan, i.e. first we detect that there is a new machine, and then we go and scan that machine. And that's always on. And then you have, of course, that you must use IDS IPS, and we do that. And then additionally you have monitor and analyze events, and we have filters that allow you to do that. and instant response and reporting.